Hello, this is Laura Wobezogen, your math instructor this semester for statistics. This is going to be a brief video that goes over Project 3, which is on commute times. So on modules, you have a folder that says Project 3 commute times, and in that folder you have an intro video. You also have the PDF of the project, and then you have a place to submit your PDF once you're done with your project. So going ahead and opening up our PDF for our commute times project, you will see that we are using data from set 31 in StatDisk. And so that's what we need in order to complete our project. And we are going to be using the commute times in various cities. And so for our project 3, we will only be using the LA data and the Dallas data that's in data set 31. Assume that data in 31 of commute times is normally distributed. So this is an individual project and each student will submit their own projects and solutions. You may work together, however, solutions should be unique to you. If two projects have the exact same wording for a solution, 0 points will be given for that part. And the project needs to be typed, and each part needs to be correctly labeled and completed in order. And StatDisk, again, will be used. Projects must be uploaded to Canvas by the due date as a single PDF file. No late projects. The points for each part are listed, and the total points that can be earned are 45. Again, we're going to be using StatDisk quite a lot for this project, and so parts 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, and 9 must all have screenshots of the output from StatDisk. Again, make sure they're legible and they're inserted into the correct part on your project. No points are going to be rewarded for those parts that are listed up above in bold if you use a graphing calculator. And we also say that you must provide and clearly state the specific answers, not just putting the screenshot, but also write your answer. Explanations need to be written in complete sentences. Show work for any calculations, such as z-scores and outliers, and fences and so forth. Answers must be rounded 3 decimal places. And the objective for the project is to gain a knowledge of working with a statistical computer program. So the first thing is that we have number 1, which again needs us to use StatDisk, says find the mean and the standard deviation of the commute times in minutes of the people in LA. So for this, you need to first download all the data, and that is talked about after all of these problems. And so it shows you here to go to Datasets, Elementary Statistics 14th edition, and then you're going to have to scroll all the way down to data set 31, which is on commute times. So I'm going to go ahead and open up StatDisk in just a second, do this. But first, number 1 is asking for those descriptive statistics, which we've done already in both Project 1 and Project 2. The number 2 says to use the data, find the 92% confidence interval of the mean commute time in minutes of the 1,000 people in LA and interpret your results. So this time it's asking for a confidence interval, which we also did in Project 2, but make sure to interpret your results. Also, big focus is that we're dealing with means for this problem. So going ahead and opening up StatDisk, if you go to Datasets, 14th edition, and then scroll down until you see the commute time dataset, which is 31, and go ahead and select that, and it will automatically put all that data in. If you had old data in there and you needed to clear it, note that there is a clear button up here that you can clear it. And then from here, again, remember all your different drop downs have everything. So for number 1, that descriptive statistics, which we've used before. And then under analysis, you'll notice that we have confidence intervals. Again, make sure you select the correct one. And again, it said means, and it's just for LA, so it's just one sample. Again, you can use summary statistics, but I think it's easier to use the data since we have all the data in there. And again, make sure you select the correct city. Again, it was Los Angeles, and set your confidence interval. Once you have that done, you can evaluate and get your confidence interval. Going back to our project. Number 3 says what needs to be verified in order to conduct the hypothesis test to determine if the mean commute times in minutes of the 1,000 people in LA is less than 32 minutes. It's not actually asking you guys to calculate it here. It just wants to know what needs to be verified. So you need to go back and look at your notes for chapter 9 on hypothesis testing. to see what has to be verified in order to conduct a hypothesis test of the mean commute time in minutes. Number 4, though, is saying to use the data, test the claim using the p-value method that the mean commute time in minutes of 1,000 people in LA is less than 32 minutes at a 5% significance level. Make sure to include the null and alternative hypotheses, test, and conclusion as done in our class notes. And so you'll notice that that's for number 4. Number 5 is also asking about the requirements. Then this is what needs to be verified. So again, it's not asking you to actually conduct that test. This time the test is between LA and Dallas, so not just one sample here, but dealing with 2 samples, and again, still dealing with means. And then number 6 is actually conducting that test using the p-value method, that the mean commute times in minutes of 1,000 people in LA is different than the mean commute times in minutes of 1,000 people in Dallas at the 10% significance level. So the difference between number 4 and number 6 is that number 4 only has one sample that we're dealing with, one population of commuters, and that's coming from LA. Whereas number 6, we're dealing with people coming from not just LA, but also Dallas, Texas. So going back to StatDisk, and dropping down from analysis, you'll notice that we have hypothesis testing. You have 1 sample for proportions, 2 samples for proportions, 1 sample for means, and 2 independent samples for means, as well as matched pairs. Again, remember, matched pairs is if they were maybe the same people that were in the 2 cities. We don't know that information, so we would be dealing with 2 independent samples. So number 4 says only LA, so you would select the 1 sample. Again, use your data. You have a significance level, your claimed mean, which you would have to enter in. We do not know the population standard deviation, and then you would select that Los Angeles, and then go ahead and evaluate. Likewise for number 6, going back to hypothesis testing, since we are dealing with 2 independent samples here, selecting that, using our data. And up here at the top, you'll notice that you need to select your alternative hypothesis. So this is either going to be not equals to, greater than, or less than. And then from here, you need to select what sample 1 is and what sample 2 is. We do have the significance, and we do not know either of those population standard deviations. Once you have that, you go ahead and select evaluate, and you will arrive at that confidence interval. For the hypothesis testing, you'll have that p-value that you can then use. I want you to realize too that you need to not just run the test, but you also need to state, as it says in here, make sure to include both the null and alternative hypotheses. The test is going to be where we compare our p-value to alpha and determine if you are going to reject your null or fail to reject your null. And then you also need to write your conclusion as done in our course. So make sure you go back and look at Chapter 9 notes for number 4 and 6. So we have number 7 says, using the data, test the claim using the confidence interval method that the mean commute time in minutes of 1,000 people in LA is different than the mean commute time in minutes of 1,000 people in Dallas. So for this, we're going to be using confidence intervals. So make sure you use the confidence interval for these 2 on StatDisk. And we had confidence intervals earlier, but again, this time we're dealing with 2 samples. Number 8 says, what is your commute time to get to Mount SAC in minutes? So if you're not living close to Mount SAC, I know some of us are residing in other states or maybe even a country, then select a nearby city to Mount SAC and just estimate how much your commute time would be. So pick a place or actually use your actual location and find the commute time to get to Mount SAC in minutes. So just round it to a nearest minutes. So maybe it's 20 minutes to get to Mount SAC, or maybe it's an hour to get to Mount SAC, so that's 60 minutes. And then it says, for number 9, it says using data set 31 on commute times, find the probability that the commute time in LA will be your commute time. So we're all going to have a unique commute time here in part 9 in minutes or longer. and says, is this value significantly low, significantly high, or not significant? So again, remember, significantly low and significantly high have very low probabilities. Those are going to be less than 0.05. And again, it did say to assume normality for this. So I'm going to go back over to StatDisk, and we've done this before in Project 2. But from here, we're dealing with probability distributions, normal distribution, and when you select this, you will have to calculate your z-value. And so your z-value, again, remember, is x minus the mean, all divided by the standard deviation. And you should have the mean and the standard deviation already from above. And then our x value would be that of your commute time. So once you type in your z-value, again, round 3 decimal places, you would select evaluate, and then you're going to get a bunch of different answers here, and you have to think about which one is the correct one, since it wants to know your commute time or longer. So which way would you have shaded our normal curve for this? So this is a brief intro video on project number 3, which again is on commute times. So make sure you get an early start on this. Remember that you do have about a month to complete this. So don't procrastinate, and then definitely reach out to me during office hours or visit the marks if you need some additional resources and help. Good luck.